Yeah, so I will dive for the first question. Thank you, Tom, for this fascinating talk. You've covered several shifts in technology, and there is one where I would like your views on. It is about decentralization of technology. It started with the internet, but now with the IoT and the advent of massive power in smaller and smaller objects, we are now talking more and more on edge computing. And if I may dare this very, very bad word, to me there's also an elephant in the room. It is called decentralized ledger technology, where I would also like to have your feelings on. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Are you talking about blockchain specifically?
Yes, I didn't want to say the B word, but yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay, so let's talk about what's going on with edge computing. So this phenomenon of the Internet of Things is really quite remarkable. So ARM aside, that has 100 billion edge devices out there. Okay, we've deployed so far 30 billion devices across the value chains of travel, transportation, the grid, digital oil fields, what have you. Okay, within 10 years, it will be 50 billion devices. Well, 50 billion devices, well, and so we think of these as sensors that we put on humans, or we put on transformers, or we put on engines, or we put on meters that allow us to remotely sense the state of things. Okay, temperature, blood chemistry, heart arrhythmia, rotational velocity, kilowatt hours, torque, downhole pressure, whatever it may be. And so this is how most people think about the Internet of Things. I think about it a little differently. Okay? Each of these devices are in fact computers. They have computational capacity. Okay? They have storage capacity, and they have communication capacity. Okay? That is a computer. Okay? And we have these fully connected, okay, into a fully connected ecosystem. Now, there was a scientist by the name of Bob Metcalfe at Xerox PARC who invented this thing called Ethernet. Turned out to be pretty useful. And he found that if we connected computers together into networks, that the sum, okay, or the whole was much more powerful than the sum of its parts. And he described that power that became known as Metcalfe's law, which says the power of the network is a function of the square of the number of nodes that we connect. Now, let's go back to our discussion on the Internet of Things, okay? And let's think about these as computers, where we have 50 billion of them, which are fully connected. I think fast math, okay, if my memory serves me correctly, 50 billion squared is order of 10 to the 21st. Okay, 10 to the 21st is roughly equivalent to the number of stars in our universe. Okay, so I look at this. So IoT and AI are really two sides of the same coin. You can look at this basically as an exceptionally powerful computing platform. Okay, and we will be doing a lot of the computation at the edge. We're doing it today, for example, on offshore oil rigs. Okay, we're doing it today on transformers. Unfortunately, we're doing it today on video cameras in cities. I don't think we should be too excited about that. Okay, now so edge computing, particularly with a lot of the technology that's been driven out of NVIDIA with these GPUs, is going to be an increasingly important trend, okay, in these AI deployments as we power into the next decade. As it relates to blockchain, and I'm certain to get myself in trouble here, right now, blockchain looks to me like a hammer looking for a nail. So I know that the Deloittes and IBMs of the world love to get a lot of mileage with their TV ads on soccer matches and whatnot about the power of blockchain. But I'm not certain that we found a lot of practical applications for that technology yet, other than kind of fueling organized crime through Bitcoin.
There's another
Probably
question.
the wrong answer. Political correctness I don't offer. Any other questions?
Yes.
Yeah.
I have one back here.
Yes. Hello, Tom. So I'm Patrice. Yes.
What company are you with?
I am from Michelin. and I'm in charge of the digital transformation for Michelin Group.
Yes, sir.
One question for you. How do you see open source as a key trend to enable the digital transformation? Many large companies are afraid to be locked in, by vendors. It used to be Oracle, SIEBEL, tomorrow Salesforce, or whatsoever. Do you see open source as something that could really help companies to drive this digital transformation effort?
Well, I think there are open source technologies that are normally useful. I think we use many of them, like Spark, for example. I think is highly efficacious. I don't think it changes. I don't think it has anything to do with lock-in. I think if you take a number, there's kind of two ways to solve this problem as it relates to building an AI platform. Okay. Just like when we brought relational database technology to market, most companies were going to build relational database systems themselves, and nobody succeeded. When we brought enterprise relationship, ERP systems and CRM systems to market in the following decade, companies were not going to buy those from SAP or Oracle. They were going to build them themselves. How many of you succeeded at building your own ERP system? Oh, that would be none. Okay. How many of you succeeded at building your own relational database system? Oh, that would be none. Okay. Now, as it relates to building these large-scale AI systems, this is 2 orders of magnitude more complex. And one approach is to go select a number of these technologies in the open source universe. Many of them are highly useful, again, where you can select, say, 100 or 200 of these, say, HDFS and Spark and Hive and Zookeeper and Oozie, and then use structured programming to cobble them together, okay, with, technologies from Azure or AWS or Google, all of which are very viable. Now, the problem with that is the number of things that you need to stitch together, you end up with a computing problem using structured programming of order of 10 to the 13th. I mean, that's pretty hard. I mean, not a lot of people outside of Ecole Polytechnique can grok 10 to the 13th. And, a number of companies have tried. I think, General Electric spent $6 billion in a decade trying to do this before it collapsed. IBM, I think, is $50 billion into this. Okay, and so far it's not working out so well. Okay, and when you're done, you have a cluster of open source technologies into which you are totally locked in, okay, that you get to maintain yourself if you could get it to work. So I think that I think a lot of these open source technologies are highly useful. We use them. Our customers use them. But I think it doesn't really prevent lock-in. It's just a different form of lock-in. Other questions? And by the way, the number of customers, organizations, large organizations that have succeeded, okay, at assembling these technologies to building a general purpose AI IoT platform by assembling, say, 100 of these open source and proprietary technologies, I think you can count that on the planet Earth who have succeeded, I think you can count on 0 fingers.
I have a question. You've been talking a lot about industry.
Yes, sir. What company are you with?
Lagardère. Would you say that digital transformation is different when you're talking with between industries and service companies?
Well, so it was clearly Engie and Enel are service companies. Shell and Royal Dutch Shell and Caterpillar are industrial companies. But the problems associated with stochastic optimization of the supply chain, the problems associated with customer churn, Bank of America is most certainly a services company. But the computing problem and the algorithmic artificial intelligence problem associated with customer churn, stochastic optimization of the supply chain, fraud detection, next best product, next best offer. I mean, they're really technically identical problems across both those classes of industries. And so I see no difference there.
Hi, I'm Christophe from PSA Group. We manufacture cars from the brand of Peugeot, Citroën, DS, Opel, and Vauxhall. Let me come back on the theory of evolution that you were talking about. With, if we zoom in, we will see those periods of extinction that you mentioned. AI and IoT, cloud computing, they all rely on enormous computing power and enormous power supply. What is your view in the fact that digital could be the next cause for extinction because of damage to the planet of this enormous power supply that is needed to run cloud computing?
My view is that I have the greatest faith, in mankind and human nature to invent, their way out of problems like that for new forms of energy efficiency, new forms of energy, and I think these are solvable problems, and this is what scientists and engineers do. This is what scientists and engineers have done throughout history, and I believe we'll do it again.
Any other questions? So in that case, I have another question. It's kind of leading to this question as well. What do you think? Do you think sometimes people say that they worry that robots are going to, or artificial intelligence is going to surpass men? When it comes to that, what's your take on that? Do you think that will happen?
Well, we are here right in the center of Gaul, so, and there's the analogy I use is, Julius Caesar used to describe Gaul, as you know, as divided into 3 parts. And I think of AI as divided into 3 parts. And the first part, where a lot of attention gets focused, is on this area of AGI, or artificial general intelligence. And this is the idea of the singularity. This is the Google DeepMind project. This is the idea that we are going to develop computers that are indistinguishable from human beings, or even more, more scary than that. Have intellectual capacity much greater than human beings. This would go back to the idea of, 2001 with HAL, or the housekeepers in Ex Machina, or the idea that the malevolent refrigerator is going to take over your house. I don't think we need to worry about that anytime soon. Candidly, I think the most powerful computer that we can conceive of today has the intellect about equivalent to a mealworm. So I don't think this happens. This second area of AI, which is a little bit problematic, has to do with the application of AI in what's going on in social media. And this is problematic, where we have these social media companies that have become more powerful than the governments that regulate them. They have figured out how to manipulate people at the level of the limbic brain. So the limbic brain is that part of the brain that evolved, say, 200 million years ago, and it's what we have in common with lizards. It deals with the stuff of survival. Food, water, sex. And it releases, the limbic brain releases a neurotransmitter called dopamine, which kind of fuels the pleasure center of the brain. And it's very clear that the people in the social media companies have figured out how to use computers to manipulate people, with the release of dopamine for addictive behavior. And now we have this, post-millennial generation, for example, that, grew up with these things. And make no mistake, these people at Facebook and Google, they know exactly what they're doing. The phone buzzes in your pocket, you get a release of dopamine. You look at the screen and you see that 5 people have liked your photo, you get a release of dopamine, right? We have an entire generation of people that whole their whole source of pleasure is from getting releases of dopamine from this device. Okay, and they don't date, they don't go out alone, they don't play sports. Okay, and and we're in the process of manipulating the public opinion of 2.2 billion people on the planet Earth, and these technologies are being weaponized. And we saw it in the last election cycle in the United States. You see it in the election cycles in Europe. You see it in the cyber attacks on Estonia. So we have the weaponization of technologies, and this is an application of AI that is truly scary. And I sat next to a French guy at a financial conference in New York. What was his name? Michael Zeisler. And Michael was the chief investment officer for Jack Ma, and then before that, the chief investment officer for John Malone, Liberty Media. Very smart guy. And he lives in San Francisco, and he would say these most outrageous things that I still haven't stopped thinking about. And one of the things that he said at dinner, he said, Tom, when history is written, social media will go down as the most destructive force in the history of civilization. I haven't stopped thinking about that. And it's, I think this is a very troubling issue. And if we don't pay attention, we will be very sorry. Now, the third area of AI, which is where I play, is basically in commercial and industrial AI. This is the application of artificial intelligence to business processes, government processes, and commercial processes to be able to design, develop, provision, operate products, more efficiently, more cost effectively, with lower environmental impact into the hands of more satisfied consumers. This looks like a $250 billion software market in 2023. So this is the fastest growing software market in the history of the information technology industry. I would say our applications tend to be more innocuous. This is generally about goodness and light, but there are issues that we need to be careful of. I mean, there are some very, very, important, ethical considerations that we need to take into consideration, or else people will be hurt. But this is the way I see this playing out. I don't think we need to worry about robots taking, the autonomous AI robot taking over our household, but it's an important technology. It's a powerful technology. It is being misused in some places. It's being used massively in China, right, with these social compliance scores. I mean, this is really scary stuff, people. And, this could happen anywhere. So this is we have this is, nuclear in its impact. The benefits will be enormous, and we need this is an area where we need to think, we need to be thoughtful, we need to regulate, we need to be careful. These are my thoughts.
Do we have any other questions? No one?
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it was my really extraordinary honor and great pleasure to have the opportunity to talk with you this morning. I thank you for the courtesy that you've extended to me. I know that we're working with many of your organizations today on these projects, and we thank you for that opportunity. It's the professional experience of a lifetime to be able to work with you, and so I thank you for that. And
we thank you for being here and for this great talk. Thank you very much.